Welcome back. In earlier video, you understood the basics of Hibernate, how to configure the HBM file, CFG file, and how to build a session factory, open a session, and save an entity using Hibernate. And also you understood about some basic ID generators as well. In this video, we're going to dig deep. We'll see what is happening internally when you build a session factory. What is happening internally when you open a session? What is happening when you begin a transaction? So we look into all the internals, and then also I will show you how to fetch an entity by using a primary key, how to update and merge entities, and also I will show you how to fire various HQL queries. We'll also see about named queries as well in this video. Let us get started. Firstly, you have seen this code in the earlier video. What is exactly happening when you build session factory? When you build session factory, this configuration is loaded and an object of session factory is created. Do you think connections are established by connecting? Do you think tables are created automatically when the session factory is built? Let us see. What I will do is I'll comment out all these lines for now. Here this file is containing only code to build a session factory. Let me run. Before I run, I'll go to my database and I'll drop this database and I'll recreate this database so that if any tables are newly created, we'll be able to observe it. Now, I'm just running the code which is just having the logic to build session factory. Run. If you see, a lot of logs have been generated because Hibernate internally uses log4j, and I have configured log4j.properties to log everything in debug mode. So that's the reason why you are seeing, if you don't want all these logs, you can of course switch off these logs. But now I want it. If you see here in the logs, you can observe that a table is created by using this statement. And here you can see the table is not found. It identified the table is not there, and that's the reason why a table is created by using this. So there's a tool called as schema update. This is the one which is automatically creating the tables. And what else? If you go and observe on the top, there is something called as entity loader, which is automatically generating the select queries, generating all the select queries. See, for various scenarios, with lock, without lock, what are all the select queries that should be fired. And also you can see that a query for insert is generated. If at all an insert has to be made into account object, what is the insert query to be fired? Update query to be fired, delete query to be fired. Everything, all the queries are generated during the startup of session factory. That's it. Connections are not established. When is the connection established? Let me say open session. Do you think the connection is established after I open a session? No, not exactly. When you say open session, what exactly happens is an object of session will be created. I just want you to observe, is this session an interface or a class? Arg.hibernate.session is an interface and there is an implementation class. When you say open session, you are getting an object of its implementation. It looks like this. So you just have to visualize a session object like this. This is a session object. It internally has a variable called as persistence context. Persistence context points to an object of persistence context. What is this persistence context? As of now, we can assume that this persistence context is just like a collection. We call this persistence context also as a first level cache. Why we call it as first level cache? You'll understand in few moments. That's all. Once open session is called, session object is created, and session has a reference of persistence context, which is right now empty. Now, if I call session.save, do you think a query is fired? Once I say session.save, let us see what will happen. I will run this program again. Once you see here, select max is fired. Why? Because in my hbm.xml I have increment strategy. So a primary key has to be associated with it inside memory, is it? So that is the reason once I save, automatically select query is fired, is that? And then a log is written, increment generator first id, first free id is 1. So this select query has returned value of a underscore num as 0 because my table is right now just now created. There are no account numbers, is it? So the maximum value of a underscore num is 0. That's the reason why this increment generator is logging free id is 1. So once I said session.save, id has to be generated. So whenever id has to be generated, the increment generator is firing this query to retrieve the maximum value of account number in the table, and then it is associating the id. Okay. Then here you can see a log saying abstract save event listener. Oh, a listener is created. A listener is invoked. So whenever you say session.save, an event is generated by Hibernate, and there is some listener which is listening for save events. So that save is calling internally all the getter methods. Okay. So once you say session.save, only a listener is invoked, and that is populating the account object. Is that? It's actually getting the values from the account object internally. But you didn't see that query is fired. So do you think connection is established to database till now? Not yet. Connection will be established only when transaction is started. Tell me, to begin a transaction using JDBC API, how do you begin a transaction using JDBC API? Connection dot set auto commit false. This is how you start a transaction using JDBC API, right? Connection object dot set auto commit false. By default, auto commit is true in JDBC. If you want to start a transaction using JDBC API, you need to set auto commit false on connection. So that means internally Hibernate also is using JDBC. So to set auto commit false, it needs to obtain a connection. Whenever you say begin transaction, at this step connection is obtained. When you say open session, connection is not yet obtained. But when you say begin transaction, here connection is obtained. And on that connection, auto commit set false. Whenever you are saying session.save, as I told you, what is happening? Once you say session.save, this is your account object in the heap. The reference of account object is kept inside the persistence context. That's all. Query is not yet fired. Whenever you say session.save, the reference of account object is kept inside persistence context. Then, if I say session.flush, let us see, session.flush. I didn't say transaction.commit, just I said session.flush. Let us observe. Is a query fired? Yep, you can see that query is fired. Is it? But let us see in database, is the row present? I'll refresh. No, the row is not present. Once you say session.flush, what happens is, for whatever objects present inside persistence context, the corresponding queries are flushed to database. And Now am I committing the transaction? Transaction is started and the insert query is fired once I set session.flush. So remember again, what is session.flush doing? What for whatever objects present inside persistence context, the corresponding queries are fired. So that is the reason insert query we are able to see on the console, but it is not committed. So if you want to see the data in database, then you have to say transaction dot commit. Now let me check. I will run this again. Now you can see that data is inserted. So once I said transaction.commit, then only commit is issued to database. But do we need to call session.flush manually even though I'm committing? Let us check. I'm running it again. Okay, insert query I'm seeing, and here you can see in the logs that JDBC transaction is committed. Let me check. If I refresh, one more row is created with an incremented account number. So whenever I'm saying commit, I don't need to flush because transaction.commit is internally first flushing the session and then issuing a commit. So whenever you are saying commit, you don't need to explicitly flush your session. Okay. So hope you understood what is happening behind the scenes when we ran the earlier example for saving an entity. Okay. So now let us see the next step. I have entities in my table. I want to retrieve an entity by using primary key. So what I can do is I can use a method on session called as session.get. There's a method called as session.get. Which entity you want to get? Account.class, and for which ID is long, which is serializable. So new long of 1. I want to get an entity with primary key 1. If you see session.get returns an object, I have to cast it. Okay, so I have said session.get and I am trying to print the account name and country. Let us see whether I'll be able to, whether it will print or not. Okay, so is it printed? Let me see. Yep, here it is printed. Yep, it is printing the name and country. Is that? But did you observe that setter method is called? So that means first actually once you say session.get, query is fired on database to retrieve the account, and then account object is populated by calling setter methods. By default, Hibernate will call setter methods, right? So what if I want the account object to be populated by using reflection API instead of calling setter methods? Let me go on to Hibernate HBM.xml file, and here I'll configure here okay, here I'll configure access is equals to field. For each and every property, I'll configure access is equals to field. Let me check. Let me check now. I'm trying to retrieve an entity by using primary key. Did you see? After the select query is fired, Did you see the setter methods being called? No. Right now what is happening? The account is getting populated automatically by using reflection API. Setter methods are not called. So by default, if you see, for this access is equals to, let me set property as access equals to property. For name I set, let me run. Only for name I have set. So is set name called? Yes. So by default the access is property. So that's the reason why setter methods are called. If you don't want to call setter methods, if you want the object to be populated using reflection API, you can just give access equals to field. Okay, you understood about that. Now what will happen if I call session.get twice? I'll say this as account 1 and account 2. Okay, and for clarity what I'll do is right now I'll just remove this. I'll go to log4j.properties and I'll give only info level logs. I don't want all logs, it's confusing. So let me run. How many queries do you think will be fired? I called session.get twice, but it is called only once. So what is happening? Once I said session.get, a query is fired, account object is populated, and reference of account will be kept inside the persistence context, which is nothing but first level cache. Again, once I say session.get, Hibernate will check if this object is already present in persistence context or not. If it is already present in persistence context, the same reference is returned. So in this case, if you see, account 1 and account 2 are variables like this. Account 1 is a variable, account 2 is a variable, both are pointing to same object. Second time the session.get has returned you the same reference. So hope you now understood why we call persistence context as first level cache. Whenever you are trying to retrieve any entity by ID, Hibernate will check is that entity present in first level cache. If not, then only it will go to database. Otherwise, it will retrieve it from the cache. Hope you understood now about what is persistence context and its usage. Okay, now let me show you how to update. If you see here, I have already the code. I am retrieving an account whose ID is 2. Then what happens? Will the account be in persistence context? Yes. Once an object is in persistence context, I am modifying it and committing. So do I need to say session.update automatically? Do you need to say session.update or automatically will it get updated? Let me check. Hey, update query is fired. So, but I didn't say something like session.update. Not required. Once you make any changes to a persistent entity, that entity will be marked as dirty. And whenever a transaction is committed or whenever a session is getting flushed, Hibernate will automatically detect all the dirty objects and propagate those changes to database. This feature of Hibernate is called as automatic dirty checking feature. Automatic dirty checking feature. This is by default enabled in Hibernate. So let me repeat it. If an object is in persistence context and if that object is modified, that object is marked as dirty. And whenever a session is getting flushed, all the dirty changes will be propagated to database. So if you see, the update query is automatically fired. But I changed only name. Why are this balance, city, country, everything are getting updated? Because I told you by default, whenever session factory is being built, at that time only update queries will be prepared, and Hibernate internally uses prepared statements. Is that? So let me just enable the debug level logs again and say debug level logs. Now let me run again. I'll change it to something Expressad. I'll run it again. Let me just show you clearly. During the startup of session factory, I want you to observe here. Is the update query generated? Yes. So update query will be generated during the startup of session factory, and same query will be used every time whenever an entity has to be updated. Since Hibernate uses prepared statements, that means prepared statements means, I hope you know, prepared statements are pre-compiled on the database side. So Hibernate uses prepared statements which contains the placeholders like this. The values for these placeholders are passed dynamically when firing the query. So since Hibernate uses prepared statements and this update statement is generated during the startup of session factory, we see that update query contains all the columns even though I modified only name. But you may ask me, hey, is it not a performance effect? I just modified only one column. Why is my update query containing all the columns? The answer is, according to the experience of Hibernate developers, they feel that prepared statements perform faster than a normal statement. If you are using prepared statement, the update queries are pre-compiled and they are stored at the database level. And whenever you are firing queries, the pre-compiled queries are used. But let's say these queries are not generated during the startup. What? The query itself is generated whenever an update query has to be fired dynamically, and then it is fired. So according to the experience of the Hibernate developers, they say that if the query is dynamically generated, then it is slower than using prepared statements. Of course, Hibernate supports you to generate the queries dynamically. You just have to configure at the class level dynamic update equals to true. So the update queries will be generated dynamically. Let me run now. See here. See what? Okay, wait. Let me just change the name at least. If the name is same, update query will not be fired, right? So let me observe here. Update query is fired. But now the update query is containing only the modified column. Let us go up and check, is this update query generated during the startup? See, update query is generated, but this query is not used because see here, this update query contains city, country, balance, everything. The query in this case is dynamically generated. It contains only the modified column. But is it using a prepared statement? No. The query is generated during the commit. When your session is flushed, at that time query is generated. So according to Hibernate developers, if the query is dynamically generated, the performance is as good as using prepared statements. So even though my query is containing all the columns, the performance is not much affected. So I'll remove this and update it again. Okay, I'll have to change it again something. Then only update query will be fired. Yes, now it is containing all columns. So since it is a debate about using generating the query dynamically which contains only updated columns or using prepared statements. So according to the performance testing done by the Hibernate developers and all, they feel that this is not a big effect because since they are using prepared statements. Okay. If you want the queries to be dynamically generated, of course you can do by using something like dynamic update equals to false, or even dynamic insert equals to, sorry, dynamic update equals to and dynamic insert equals to true. Even insert queries also will be generated dynamically. Okay. So that's about how to update. Here in this case it is getting updated because of automatic dirty checking feature. Okay, so let us move to the next step. We'll see what is save or update. In this code, if you see, I'm creating an account object and setting the account number, the primary key. Then I am calling session.save. Do you think this account number will be taken into consideration? Okay, before that, just see this account.hbm.xml. I have used increment strategy. So, and also my database has a maximum ID of 4. Now, if I try to run this example, I am sure that account object will be inserted, but what will be the account number? Will it be 100 or 5? Let us check. So inserted, let me check the database, refresh, of 5. So that means whenever you are calling session.save, always insert will be fired, and if account number is already set, it is ignored. Okay, so now let me make a small modification. In Hibernate API, there is a method called as save or update. Let us try to see what happens. Now in this case, right now the maximum ID in my table is 5 and I'm setting the value of 100. I'm saying session.save or update. Let me run it. Oh, I got a stale state exception. Why is this exception? Let me explain. Whenever you say session.save or update, Hibernate needs to understand whether to insert or update. It understands like this. If the value of primary key is null, then that means it is a transient instance. That means it is not yet saved. It is not associated with the persistence context. So in such case, it will issue a insert query. But if the account object is set, then Hibernate will assume that it is a detached object and it will try to fire an update query. Now in this case, as the account number is set, it will try to fire an update query. But how many rows will this update query return? If it tries to update an account with account number 100, is there account with number 100? No. So the update query will return 0 rows updated. That means in such cases I will be getting stale state exception. Hibernate tried to update it, but there is no row which is updated. In that case, it will fire this, it will show this stale state exception. What if I don't set the account number? Hibernate will treat that this is a newly created object. That means it's a transient instance and it will try to insert. Let me run it. It will be inserted and the account number will be 6 right now in my database. Yes. So that's how save or update works. Hope it is clear. Before we move further, let us try to understand states of entities in Hibernate. If a newly created object is present, we say that it is in transient state. There are three states in Hibernate: transient state, persistent state, and detached state. What are these states? A newly created object, if it is not associated with the session, then we say that it is in transient state. So let me just show you here. I have created an object of account, and at this line, whenever I say session.save, the reference of account will be kept into persistence context. So before calling session.save, we say that account object is in persistent state, sorry, transient state. But after I call session.save, the account object is associated with the persistence context. We say that it is in persistent state. So if the reference of your entity is in session, then we say that it is in persistent state. Okay. Now let me just ask you, after committing here, I'll say session.close. Session.close. After closing the session also, I can use this account object. I can use this account object here. So the account object, is it associated with any session after I close this session? No, right? It is said to be in detached state. Okay. Okay. Now you understood three states of an entity. Let us try to understand few more things. So how to make a transient instance as persistent? Let's say this is transient. How to move an entity from transient to persistent state? What are all the ways? If I call session.save, it will become persistent. Or even if I call session.save or update, it will become persistent. How to make a persistent entity transient? You can just say session.delete. Session.delete, if I pass a reference of entity to this, it will be deleted. So persistent entity will become transient. Okay, is there any way to make a transient instance as persistence? No. Okay, there is one more state, detached. How to make a persistent entity as detached? One way is we can close the session. The session is closed, all the entities present in the session will become detached. Or there is one more way, we can call session.evict. If I pass a reference of an entity, that entity only will be removed from session. So this is another way to make a persistent entity as detached. Or we can say session.clear. All the entities present inside session will be removed and they become detached. These are the ways to make a persistent entity as detached. Now, how to make a detached entity as persistent? One way is to call session.update, or save or update also will work. Save or update. Okay, is there any other thing? Yes, there is one more thing also called as merge. Session.merge. We'll see what is the difference between update and merge also little later, right? So how to make a detached entity as transient? We cannot directly make a detached entity as transient. First it has to be made as persistent and then we have to delete. So we can say session.delete, but what it will do? Session.delete will make the object persistent and then delete it internally. So these are the ways to move the object from one state to another state. Once you understand about these things, let me just discuss about merge operation. A very interesting thing. If you see here, I created a session and I am retrieving an account with primary key 2. So that means account is now in which state? Persistent state. After I close the session, this account is in detached state. So I am making changes to a detached object, opening another session and updating it. So a detached entity will become persistent, and whatever changes are made for those, update query will be fired. So session.update will result in an update query being fired. Let me check. For this account with ID 2, the name is something else. Right now I am setting a name to city to AAA. City is what? Bangalore right now. I am setting a city to AA and then running it. Let us check. Yep, update query is fired. Let me check in database. Is it updated? Yes, the city is updated. So session.update will make a detached entity as persistent and will result in an update query. But then there's a problem with update. See, I'm modifying a scenario a bit. What I'm doing is in the second session, I'm getting an account with ID 2. I'm uncommenting this line. So in second session, I retrieved the account with ID 2 and account 2 is pointing to this. Then what? I am making a detached entity. Account is a detached entity. Account 2 is persistent. Then I am making detached entity as persistent by calling session.update. So what will happen? Is it not a conflict? So let me just draw a diagram. If you see, this is second session. In the second session, I already retrieved an account object with ID 2 and it is there. This is what is done. I already retrieved an object with ID 2 and it's there. And in the heap, there is one more account object with ID 2. The value of the city is something like AAA. It's a detached object, right? So, okay, let me just change it to say BBB. Now, this is a detached object. Detached object is having BB. And once I retrieved the account with ID 2, in my database right now the value of city is AAA. So that means here I have account object with AAA and it is in session. Now if I try to update, what will happen? This detached object also will become persistent. That means in session there are two entities with same primary key. Is it not a conflict? Yes. So let us run this. We'll see what is the problem. See, it is saying non-unique object exception. A different object with same identifier value is associated with session. It's clearly saying, right? But what I may want in this case is, whatever values are there for the detached object have to be merged into this second session. I want these values to be taken. So instead of using update, I will have to use merge. Let us see what will happen in case of merge. Will it result in an update query? Yep, it resulted in an update query. Is it? Yes. So what is happening in case of merge? In case of merge, it is not putting this detached object into session. What it is doing is it's copying all the values from this detached object to persistent object. That means this persistent object is becoming dirty. Then this dirty changes are propagated to database. That is what is happening. So what is the state of this object still? It is detached. This object is only the persistent one. Okay. Now, return value of merge is again an object. I will take it in a reference variable account 3. Account 3. Do you think account 2 and account 3 are pointing to same object? Yes, right? Let me check. I just take this and let me run. And let me change the value to something like CCC. Okay, so I expect that this will return true. Let me check. Where is it? Where is my system out? I'll say error dot println, and also better I'll go to log for dot properties and I'll make it as info level log. Let me run it now. Better I'll make it as ddd. Then let me run. Update query is fired, and you can see here account 2 is equals to account 3 is true. That means the merge session dot merge is just copying the values from detached entity to persistent entity, and session dot merge is returning the same object which is already there on the session. Okay, now what will happen if I run this again? In my database already the city is ddd. I didn't make any changes, so the detached object is not having any changes. Let me check. Will it result in an update query at all? Is it resulting in any update query right now? No, is it? So merge will try to copy the values from detached entity to persistent. Since there are no changes, this object is not dirty, so update is not propagated. But what about session dot update? Let me remove this to avoid conflict. What is it saying? Oh, session dot update will not return anything. I'll comment it. What in case of update? See, the value in database is still ddd, and what I have retrieved in previous session, and this value is same still. Then I'm updating. Do you think it will result in an update query? Let us see. Even though the object is not changed, session dot update will always fire an update query, whether the object is changed or not. Session dot update will always result in an update query, but whereas session dot merge will result in an update query only if there are some changes. So I want you to understand this clearly. That's about session dot merge. Now let me show you few more things. I want to fire HQL queries. So there are various scenarios I am going to show you. If you want to fire HQL queries, what you have to do is you have to say session dot create query, and you have to pass your HQL query. So I'll say from account. Actually I want to retrieve all account. Normally in SQL what we do, we say select star from account table. Here also select star is not required, from account will be sufficient. And remember, this is not the table name, this is the class name. So in HQL we fire queries on classes, on entities actually, not on classes. But whereas in SQL we fire queries on tables. Session.create query will return you an object of query. Okay, then how to retrieve? Query dot list will return a list of accounts. I'm iterating over all accounts and I'm trying to print. Let us see. How many accounts are there in my database? There are 6 accounts. It should print all. See, 6 times they are printed. Is that? So let me just remove this getters and setters, because I have written setter method statements here. It is confusing, so I'll delete all this and I will generate again. Now I will try to run this HQL demo. Yep, see, a HQL query has been fired to retrieve all the accounts, and then I retrieved all the 6 accounts. This is the simplest way to fire a HQL query. Then let me add some condition. I want all accounts belonging to city Bangalore and country India. So I'll add a where clause. So I'll give an alias from account A. A is an alias where A dot, let me open account class. A dot city and country are the property names. So I'll use A dot city is equals to colon. I can give a placeholder. It's a my city, and A dot country is equals to colon my country. So these are just placeholders. We have to set the values before calling query.list. So query dot set. What are these city? City is a string, right? So there are corresponding methods. I am setting string, and I can set a value based on the position or based on the name. I'll use a name that is convenient. So I'll use a name, my city. So for my city, I want to give the value as Bangalore. In my database, yep, it's capital B, Bangalore. And also I want to set the value for my country. Query dot set string my country. Sorry. And I'll give here India. Then I am saying query.list. I'll get only the accounts belonging to Bangalore and India. In my database, how many are there? Only one is there for Bangalore. Let us check. I will run this. Yep, see, I got only one account, and the query is using the where clause appropriate. These are how you can fire HQL queries by setting the parameters. Is that okay? Now I want to modify the query a bit. I'll comment out these lines. I'll comment out. Now I want to select, I don't want the whole account object, I want to select only name and city from account. So how to write the query? See here, I'll use session dot create query. So I have to select only name and city. So what I'll do is I'll say from account A, but I don't want the whole account. I'll say select A dot city, A dot name, comma A dot city from account. Whenever you are selecting columns, we say that you are doing a projection on particular columns. Whenever you fire a projected query, the query.list will return list of object array. That means for every row, one object array will be created. First element of the array will be name, second object of the array will be city. So I'm iterating over list of object array and I'm trying to print column 0 which is name and column 1 which is city. So let me run. Yep, see, it select only name and city and it printed. So that's fine. But I'm not comfortable working with list of object array. So what to do? What I have done is I have created a class called as account DTO which contains only name and city, and there's a constructor as well which takes name and city. Now in my query, I'll just modify my query to use new qualified class name is this one. New com.waitlearn.online.model.account.dto, and I'm using. So this is called as dynamic instantiation. In the query itself, I'm instantiating an object of account DTO. So once I fire this query, I will get a list of account DTO objects. So first of all, let me comment all these lines. I have the same query here. So in this case, I'll be getting a list of account DTO objects. Let me check if it works or not. Yep, it worked, right? So this is called as dynamic instantiation in HQL query. But I'm not comfortable giving the whole qualified class name. I would just want to give the class name. Let me check if I just give the class name, will it work? I'm running it. Oh, an exception. What is it saying? Class not found exception, unable to locate the class. Okay. So to do that, what I'll do is I'll just write import class is equals to account DTO dot waitlearn online dot model dot account DTO and rename it to account DTO. Okay, so let me run this HQL query and let us observe now. Yep, it worked. HQL query was fired and it was able to convert it to list of account DTOs. So what is happening once I did import? Actually, by default, whenever you are writing a class tag in HBM.xml, internally Hibernate maintains something called as HQL namespace. Whatever names you use in your HQL queries, they have to be present in HQL namespace. Basically, whenever you write a class tag, the qualified class name as well as the unqualified class name are automatically imported to HQL namespace. That is the reason when we say from account, it works earlier. But this account DTO is not mapped using a class. It's a normal class. It's not an entity. It is not mapped. So whenever you want to use such class names in HQL queries, you have to import this. So now in this case, account DTO is imported to HQL namespace and it points to this class. So if you want to use any class name directly in your HQL queries, you have to import it. Then only it works. Hope you understood about all these HQLs. Then next, let me show you the last one for now, named queries. What are named queries? Actually, it's not a good practice to write your queries in your code. Till now what we did? We wrote all our queries in our code. If I have to change my query, I have to come to code and change it, which is a very bad practice. So what we can do is we can just go to the HBM XML file and we can write our query there itself. How? Let me just show you. So in the class tag, if you see according to DTD in the class tag, I can have a tag called as query at the last. So here I am writing a query tag. Query name is equals to get say accounts by city and country. Some name I give, and inside this I have to write query like this. I am writing a C data section inside the XML, and here I have to write my query. So for this query, from account where city is equals to my city and my country, I have given a name. Then see in my named query, what I have to do is, whenever I am preparing a query, I have to say session dot get a named query. Earlier I used create query, right? Get named query. What is the query name I gave? I'll just copy and I will paste it here. So get named query will give you a query object for this named query. Let me run, whether it will work or not. Oh, it threw an exception. What is it saying? The named query not known, it's saying. So the problem is here, you have the query tag inside this class tag. So whenever you are saying get named query, you have to give the qualified name. That means you just have to give like this. Get named query com.waitlearnonline.model.account.get account by city and country. Let me check it will work or not. Yep, it worked. Is that okay? But what you can do is, if you want this query to be available directly, you can just take this query tag and keep your query tag outside the H class tag. If you see for Hibernate mapping, there can be a query tag as well, more than one query tag as well. So I kept this query tag outside the class tag, so directly I can use this query name. Let me go ahead, remove this and check whether it will work or not. Yep, it worked. So that's how to use the named queries. So hope you understood the basics of Hibernate and what is happening behind the scenes, and we have understood how to perform CRUD operations. To create an entity, we use session.save. Read an entity, we can use either session.get or we can use a HQL query. To perform updates, we can use session.update or session.merge or session.save or update. And to delete, we can use session.delete. I showed you various ways to fire HQL queries and named queries. And we understood the differences between session.update and session.merge. And also we understood about states of entities in Hibernate, like transient state, persistent state, and detached state. So that's about the basics of Hibernate. I'll meet you in next video where we discuss about some more concepts. See you in next video.